You can start your presentation if you can hear us.
Thanks, Joanna. It's coming through now, so sorry about that technical difficulty. So what I'll do, actually, would just like to make sure that I can be heard.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. Thanks, Mayor Stewart.
Oh, don't freeze on us.
Can we all see that all right?
No,
Yeah.
It didn't share.
Yeah, you can share your screen, right? Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So all technical difficulties aside, very thrilled to be here tonight with you all and my colleague John to present to you the environmental master plan. So as our agenda for the evening, I'll provide a very brief introduction as to why we're here. I'll go over the project goals, then into the planning process. I'll provide an overview of the plan, and then ultimately where we find ourselves right now and how we're going to move forward. So as an introduction, for those of you who are tuning in via live stream, my name is Jeff Robson. I'm the design lead with Intelligent Futures. I've been project managing the development of the EMP with my counterpart, Joanna Zwang. And I've got as well John Lewis, who's been supporting the project through the process. And we've been working with the City of Beaumont since the fall of 2020 to develop a refreshed environmental master plan based on the work that had been done to date, going back to 2013, the Keep It Green environmental master plan. And ultimately the EMP will provide strategic direction to guide all environmental initiatives for the period of 2021 to 2026. And so the project goals, the central animating factors of the EMP that is in front of you this evening are ones of alignment, clarity, collaboration, and monitoring. So through alignment, we hope to bring Beaumont's environmental policy in line with the rest of the municipal planning framework. Where clarity is concerned, we look to support implementation through clear timelines, responsibilities, and resourcing. For collaboration, we're looking to bring together the varied experience and skill of Beaumontians, both within the City of Beaumont as a municipality, but then within the community as well, to prompt environmental action and ultimately progress. And then finally into monitoring, understanding that this is a big strategic plan. Thus, we need to know where we are, so measure, observe, and adapt to changing conditions, which I think is something we can definitely all appreciate in the summer of 2021. And then as well, project successes and new challenges as they arise. So how the plan has been prepared through a four-step planning process, beginning, as I said, in the fall of 2020, and then ultimately culminating here tonight. And I will briefly go over each of these phases. So in phase one, the assessment phase, we sought to review the 2013 EMP to understand how it was implemented, what successes there were, what challenges there were, so that we could ultimately learn from those who came before us and draft a EMP reflective of that. And then as well to assess policy changes, both within Beaumont, understanding that the previous plan was from 2013, and the Edmonton region as well, to understand how those may shape the new plan. And then review ultimately of City of Beaumont priorities to ensure that the EMP can support those. And then moving into phase two, having built that foundational knowledge, we went out to the community, virtually of course, and sought to engage them on the overall vision for the future of the environment in Beaumont, and then potential issues to be resolved and opportunities to be capitalized upon. And this was done through a 3-week promotion in the Nouvelle Beaumont and then cross promotion across other engagements. So those in particular being affordable housing and age friendly, which were occurring concurrently. At this process, we saw 118 unique visitors and 152 page views on the project webpage. That was the central repository for project information. We also saw 41 participants in interviews and questionnaires across the month of November in 2020. And then ultimately we did option a community workshop in late November 2020. But due to a confluence of factors, no doubt one of them being the then second wave of the coronavirus, we did not see any uptake on that offer. And while at the time that wasn't the most preferable thing that could have happened, we ultimately took the lessons from that experience and used that to inform both the phase 4 engagement that was then forthcoming, but then as well, how we approached the design and development of the plan to fold public engagement into different actions so that we're not just seeking input from people at key moments, but really building out an expectation that engagement occurs quite frequently on environmental initiatives. And then moving from phase 2 into phase 3, we began developing the plan itself based on the prior lessons learned. And so here we identified 4 key questions to guide the development of the planning approach. A review of environmental policies and targets in other Alberta municipalities, both within the Edmonton region and beyond, to understand how the city of Beaumont is doing, what other municipalities are doing, so we're not making decisions in a vacuum. And then as well, performed extensive consultation with City of Beaumont staff. So the key questions were premised on how do we target areas of concern? What are the areas of concern? And here we landed on focus areas of air, community design, ecology, energy, waste, and water. How do we collaborate, understanding that no strategic plan gets implemented by a select few. So emphasizing the City of Beaumont's capacity to deliver environmental initiatives, but also broadening that scope to identify partnerships to be made outside of the municipality. How do we generate interest? So again, learning our lesson from phase 2, promoting participation through extensive education opportunities embedded in the actions, public engagement, of course, and then outreach wherever we can find it. And then finally, again, how do we evaluate impact? So developing a measurement and monitoring program to understand the progress over time from 2021 going forward. And so that ultimately culminated in the centerpiece of this phase, which was the strategy sprint. And this was a 3-day intensive with City of Beaumont administration, which considered lessons learned from the prior phases to arrive at a draft vision, goals, and indicators, a detailed set of actions, and an implementation approach. And then, of course, we took that forward to council to get your feedback and input to ensure that this plan was proceeding with as many eyes on it as we could get. And ultimately, we believe this has led to a stronger plan. And through the strategy sprint process, collectively, the City of Beaumont has contributed 265 hours amongst both council and administration towards shaping the direction of the EMP. And then finally, with the strategy sprint done, with the plan developed, we moved into a review phase to ensure, did we get it right? How could we improve? And so this was done by circulating amongst the departments within the City of Beaumont, but as well raising it to the regional level with the EMRB and those municipalities within the intermunicipal planning framework. So the City of Edmonton, Leduc County, and then finally the utility commissions. But chiefly, of course, we brought this back to the public in the draft form. So the public was able to read the draft plan on the project website. There was also understanding there was a certain amount of Zoom fatigue. We instead made everything asynchronous. So there was a walkthrough video that was approximately 30 minutes long where I walked people watching the video through the EMP to date so that they might understand the purpose and scope of the plan. There was also an online questionnaire to provide feedback on the plan in general, so the vision and the goals, but also the plan's actions in particular. And then we also wanted to provide an opportunity with this focus on engagement and collaboration for the public to provide their contact information so that they can stay involved in the implementation of the EMP over the next 5 years. They were able as well to provide the particular actions that they were interested in supporting. And so ultimately, this process saw 182 participants providing feedback on the plan and the actions through the survey, so that over quadrupled, I guess, the previous engagement numbers. There was also 916 post engagements across Facebook and Instagram. And while we wanted, of course, input across the plan, we were also looking to see what the level of support was for each action. And so here you can see there's the arrow at the bottom denoting a 50% threshold. So each action is exceeding a 50% threshold for public support, with the lowest not dipping below. And then, of course, now moving from process into an overview of the plan itself. When building a strategic plan, there's obviously so many different directions you can take it. And we, of course, need to delimit that some to make this reasonable and actionable. And so what we do in this process, and in any strategic planning process we undertake, is we want to understand the environment in which this plan comes together. And so here, the development of the plan was guided by a few different tenets. There was, of course, the lessons learned, so the experiences from the 2013 EMP, what positives were there, what negatives might have occurred that we needed to attend to. So that was a definite factor. There's also the environmental context, of course, of Beaumont, so what is happening on the ground. There's established standards, both generally at a municipal level and then provincially and federally, that we wanted to ensure the plan was aware of, that the plan could support at any opportunity. There's also, of course, municipal priorities. So understanding that since the EMP was created in 2013, there's been significant change at a policy level for the city of Beaumont. So bringing the EMP in line with plans such as the municipal development plan and the transportation master plan, among others. And then finally, stakeholder feedback. So the feedback that was garnered through phases 2 and 4. And all of these things, of course, come together to shape the direction of the plan. And so the plan is really premised, again, on 4 implementation principles that will kind of echo what I've spoken to so far. And so that is clarity, providing a clear understanding of the direction of the plan and the city of Beaumont's place in it, so that people who are interested in supporting environmental progress can clearly see where the city is and get involved. Then focus, so emphasizing the quality of results over the quantity of actions. So we sought to narrow the scope, but broaden the depth of what we were doing. Inclusivity, so supporting collaboration, both within the city of Beaumont's departments, but also more broadly within the community, and indeed in parts of the region, connection and partnerships to support the ultimate realization of the plan's ambitions. And then finally, priority, so logically sequencing the plan's actions to reflect the priorities that already exist at the city of Beaumont. This, of course, isn't the only thing that's going on within the city. There's many different things to do, and then to respect the available resources so that we're ultimately being the most efficient and effective as we can be. And so this translates into a plan structure where you have a top level vision that's, we want it to be high level. That moves into tailored goals for each of the 6 focus areas. Then that translates itself into a 5-year implementation plan that is premised on 3 implementation pillars that need to be realized for impact. So internal staffing and resourcing, coordination within the city, but also collaboration outside of the city with other partners, and then measurement and monitoring, again, so that you understand where you are and thus where you can go from there. And then those pillars are connected to 14 actions, some of which are directly aligned with the pillars to support them as much as we can. Those are what we call foundation. And then as well, we have other actions attending to urban design and development, strategies and programs, infrastructure and services, and again, funding and partnerships to see what is out there that we can tap into to maximize the impact of the plan and get as much support as possible in implementing it. And this is supported by an implementation approach. So it's a 4-phased approach where we're looking to generate a lot of flexibility into the plan and to build in a sense of partnership and accountability throughout. So in part 1, 2021 to 2026, obviously actions are important. We're looking to initiate all the actions in the plan during this time. Then moving into part 2, there's reporting. So meeting quarterly to report on the plan, to discuss the latest goings on with the plan, and then elevating that to annually report on metrics and actions to understand on a rolling basis how implementation is proceeding. From there, you can see a clear line of sight into assessment. So evaluating that activity, which then allows for adjustment. Has more success been achieved than anticipated? That is great. We can potentially then have new actions brought online. If some actions are stalled out, there's a possibility then to revisit why that's the case and what might be done to mitigate that. So trying to build in a lot of flexibility here, I think, is key to ensuring the plan ultimately succeeds in implementation. And this all culminates in 2027 with building on the timeframe of 2013, having a period of time elapsed before updating the plan. And similarly here, where the plan gets refreshed. So having learned lessons from this plan implementation, where does the future of environmental progress in Beaumont need to go, building on what we believe to be a successful implementation process. And then ultimately what this serves to do is we've got a long-term vision to 2050, but this incremental adaptive process allows for change to be made in the plan to support that vision going forward. And so ultimately talking a lot about visions, goals, focus areas, now we can get into those. So with the Emt Vision, I think last we met, this was much longer. What we sought to do here is make this very concise and very memorable. And so simply put, with the vision for the Emt, the city and the community of Beaumont work together to make sustainable choices every day to preserve the natural environment for future generations. And this vision gets translated into 6 focus areas that ultimately translate the vision into action. So these focus areas are air, community design, ecology, energy, waste, and water. Within these focus areas, we have goals. And so these are ideal states, understanding the actions reflect the fact that the city of Beaumont might not be able to individually impact all of them, but there's ways that collaboratively can be worked on together with partners in the region, partners within Beaumont. And so for air, the goal is that Beaumont's air is clean and continually exceeds quality standards to protect and support the health of the community and of the natural environment. And the reflective indicator here is the number of days per year when the AQHI is above low risk status as a measurement of that. For community design, we're looking for one of the strongest ways a municipality can shape the environment, which is through issues of land use and transportation. So the goal here is that Beaumont is a sustainable community that supports active transportation, housing diversity, mixed use developments, and a connected and continuous open space network to promote a high quality of life while minimizing development impacts. And there's a breadth of indicators here. They relate to issues of sustainable transportation, housing density, green building incentive programs, and low impact development, which are reflected in the actions. Moving into ecology, that Beaumont's aerial, aquatic, and terrestrial health is protected, enhanced, and connected within an ecological network. Here, the indicators are premised on issues of biodiversity, of tree canopies, of habitat and trail connectivity, of riparian area health, and of community food assets. Then into energy, here the goal is that Beaumont efficiently consumes less energy overall, with a greater share generated from renewable sources. And so here the indicators are focused on, of course, renewable energy at both corporate and community level, reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and the number of applications made to available clean energy programs in Beaumont. Moving into waste, that Beaumont diverts the majority of waste from landfill through responsible consumption, reuse, recycling, and composting. And so here we're looking at the per capita generation of waste, recycling, of composting, the amount of waste diverted from landfill is kind of a corollary to that. And then the percentage of contaminated, composted, and recycled goods. And then finally, water. So we're looking here at a goal of Beaumont stewarding its high quality water resources through responsible use and consumption. So of course, water consumption being the watchword, focused both on per capita potable water consumption, water consumed by corporate facilities and services, and then of course as well building in indicators focused on unaccounted for water, whether that's that lost from infrastructure leakage or unauthorized access, or wastewater infiltrating from where it should be. And then finally, moving into each of the actions, I'm not going to go into too much depth here because I could not unreasonably be here for a very long time doing that. So in respect of your time, I'll just state that again, we're focused here on the principle of clarity. So really narrowing down to what we believe are both the most impactful actions, those that will get people interested and excited about the environment in Beaumont, and those that will generate momentum towards future actions going forward. So we're really taking a focused approach to environmental progress, where there's a number of different opportunities. So there's bolded text under 8 of these actions that are really premised on engaging the community significantly in these actions to really both obviously get community input, but make the community of Beaumont agents of change within their own community. And then as well, reaching out to new partnerships and funding opportunities. That's going to be a continued environmental scan, but we've set up a few preliminary actions there to start, focused on joining the Alberta Capital Airshed as part of a regional framework for air quality management, joining up with the Edmonton region to really advance a shared voice towards the government of Alberta's current anticipated extended producer responsibility framework, so that we're moving away from having municipalities be responsible for waste in a way where producers should be responsible for the waste generated, and then ultimately support and ultimate sign up with the Government of Alberta's Clean Energy Improvement Program, so that we can begin to make some impact at the community design and energy efficiency levels. So to support, again, the principle of clarity, each action accompanies a great amount of detail. So we have a comprehensive description with an intended outcome. So City of Beaumont can see an ideal state. There is the rationale for inclusion in the plan. So I'm not always going to be around to provide a presentation on my thinking of the plan, but I wanted that to be embedded in the document so that it has staying power. Alignment with the focus areas to ensure that we're meeting the overall framework of the plan. Providing a list of municipal roles so that the municipality knows what it should be doing with respect to each action. Correspondingly, the lead in contributing city departments, so who within the City of Beaumont is responsible for what. The suggested level of resourcing. The list of potential external partners, which changes based on actions. So really keeping an eye on how external partners from the development industry to ENGOs to the community can all provide their voice, can have a role to play in the realization of each action. And then the anticipated implementation timeframe, the key steps within that implementation timeframe. So again, those responsible for implementing the plan can see where they are in time. and then links to implementation pillars and other actions. So again, we were really sensitive through this process that we wanted actions that would complement each other so that impact in one area could reasonably help support impact across the entire plan. And so before I conclude, I just wanted to speak to moving forward. Obviously, you have the plan in front of you. It is in a Microsoft Word-esque format. What we're looking to do as well within the scope of this project is also provide an editorial design for the environmental master plan, as you can see on the left-hand side here. And what we aim to do at a practical level is reflect the City of Beaumont's brand, so it looks very much like the Made in Beaumont document that it is, and the existing document library. So those looking at the MDP and the EMP can see that they relate to each other. But moreover, that it is a user-friendly and accessible document that guides and inspires environmental action within both the city and community of Beaumont for the next 5 years, but ultimately beyond. And I'd like to say thank you both for your time this evening. Also your time, Council, in providing a lot of good feedback through this process. I would also like to provide a great deal of thanks to the community members who provided their key feedback through this process. They were quite instrumental in helping to shape the outcomes of the plan. And finally, to the City of Beaumont's administration. It has been an absolute pleasure to work both with my counterpart, Mr. Wong, but also more broadly, the entire administration. They've been tremendously supportive and key in getting the plan to this point. So with that, I will conclude and yield my time. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate your presentation this evening. It's a great plan. It's laid out nicely. It flows from high level to tactical actions, which has always been one of my things. We always have these always have these master plans, and they, if you don't have the right tactical objectives at the end of them, they tend to sit on the shelf and gather dust. So, watching this, I have great confidence that we'll actually be able to implement this one. So, Mr. Wong, are you complete your presentation, or?
Yeah, I think we can conclude the presentation, and we welcome council for discussions and questions.
Thank you very much. So we'll open up the floor to members of council for questions and comments. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Moncada-Swain.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation and great report. It's been good to be involved all along the way, like you had said, through the council sprint and through to tonight. A couple big picture questions on engagement, and then a couple that are more pointed. Just on the engagement of 182 responses, looked like the survey was open for about 15 days. And just wondering, how would you rate this level of engagement for an exercise like this? Were you happy with that number, or could it have been more, or was it a really good response?
Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. It's a very good question. I think particularly in the context of how this plan proceeded during the pandemic, I kind of placed it relatively. So under a previous time when we might have been able to be more active within the community, the number is quite slight. However, that being said, we're quite pleased with the overall uptick of engagement from phase 2 to phase 4, having, I think, as I said, over quadrupled the amount. And again, I think we took it to be ultimately a lesson that, maybe focus on the environment isn't quite where it needs to be, but that's because there are so many different things that people are prioritizing right now, both as it relates to the City of Beaumont, but also within their own lives. So again, we're really looking forward to seeing how each of the engagement pieces within the plan are realized, because I think ultimately from those who participated, there was a lot of positive support and sentiment to get more involved in some of these more tactile things, like a biodiversity strategy or an urban agriculture plan.
Yeah, great, thank you. And a couple of the big picture themes that stood out for me was, like you just said, the urban agriculture and the urban forestry. And I almost wonder if those that might not be because those are the things that people can most readily identify with, and they can get involved with themselves, they can see, feel, and be a part of. So that's just a comment on the themes. But the one piece I did twig in on was, I always look at what was the highest and what was the lowest. So when we look at what the lowest was, it was actually the pilot on demand transit. And it received the lowest ratings. The positive was 51.93, neutral was 26.5, and negative was 21.55. I'm just wondering if you can speak to this a little bit. Where there, that you have condensed the themes, but I'm just wondering if you can think back to some of the narrative that was provided by those respondents regarding pilot on demand transit, and if you could speak to that for a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, I that's a good follow up on that. So there was I think a tension. The reason the on-demand transit ultimately is included in the plan is with respect to community design and understanding that Beaumont Transit has the connectivity to the city of Edmonton, which is key, but there's sort of the last mile problem in terms of providing alternative means of transportation within the community, whether to kind of the regional transit connectivity or with respect to other amenities that are within Beaumont that can be traveled to. And so I think in part, I didn't see too much overall concern actually expressed in the commentary. It seemed mostly rooted in, well, I have a vehicle, so this isn't that useful to me. And, fair enough. But for on-demand transit, what we're ultimately hoping to do is really provide connectivity for those who might be mobility impaired in some way or not be able to drive, to really, again, bridge that last mile problem so that there's a kind of an efficient means of transportation for them. So my sense of where that came from was largely just focus on individuals thinking, well, I can drive, I'm not certain I need this.
And would you say that you expected that type of a response in Beaumont, or was that a surprise?
I find, having done a fair amount of work in kind of mid-sized Alberta cities, that's not a uncommon sentiment. So that was one action where I was curious if we would receive that sort of feedback when we were originally drafting the plan. But again, I think it all returns to us being stewards of the larger strategic picture to understand both from an accessibility standpoint and from the environmental standpoint that the positive impacts that on-demand transit can have in moving the needle on travel patterns within the city. So, the numbers are somewhat jarring relative to others, but it's nothing that hadn't crossed my mind in building out the action.
And just last comment, it would be interesting to hear the befores and afters in communities such as Cochrane and Okotoks, where on-demand transit has come into play. So, anyways, thank you for the report, and that's it for me right now, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Newkirk. Councillor Munkoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Stowe.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Mr. Robson, for the presentation. A lot of information and great to see it kind of all wrapped up here in this one document. My questions may be more directed to administration here, and I guess I was surprised to read in the request for decision in the budget financial impact every time that comes up. In here, administration put not applicable. So I wanted to pull on that a little bit more. In terms of the implementation of this plan. Now the action items in here are very well listed. You've got your timelines, you've got all that sort of stuff linked in there. And then, when it comes to resourcing and you're vague, and I can appreciate why you're vague. But in there, it'll say staffing, it'll say part-time, multiple staff for part-time. So, presumably we're at 0, right? And so now we've got multiple staff at part-time. So like, is there going to be a resource? Is it just resources that we're going to need to be able to implement this? Is there additional budget? There's also comments in there that say, potential for consultants, all that sort of thing. So just maybe help me understand why administration identified that the budget impact is not applicable.
Okay, yeah, the reason why we put not applicable there for now is that we don't know whether those implementation action items will be technically the plan, whether we will be considered by council, will be approved by council. And those actions, when council approve it, there will be a project team set up and then identified, develop terms of reference, and then the resourcing will be more obvious at that stage. So at this time, we don't want to speculate and just put a number there or how many staffing requirements we would require to implement the plan. For now, we have one staff member, the environmental lead that we recently procured. So she will take the lead on coordinating and make sure the 14 actions that are identified in the plan would be implemented according to the timelines set out in the plan. But then once each action is starting implementation, then there will be more information coming. Then we will be coming back to council for more information. And if there is a budgetary requirements, then we will ask council to consider that at that point of time. That is why at this point of time, we don't want to put something that is skewing basically the forecast.
Okay, thank you. And maybe a follow-up to that then. Help me understand. Let's say we approve this tonight. My assumption, and may be wrong, is you guys are going to take that as direction from council that we agree with all these actions that you're looking to implement. You're going to go away and execute those. I wouldn't expect you guys to come back and say, hey, I'll use the urban agricultural plan. You're not going to come back to council and say, hey, we think this is going to cost us, X of a staff time, that sort of thing. So that's why I'm asking the question now. This is really my time to ask those questions. So at what stage, yes, you are going to make those financial decisions, and then yes, you may or may not need to bring in a consultant. I'm sure you're going to, if you needed additional funding, that's when you'd come back to us. But I guess that's my concern, not for the plan, but just the implementation of it is, what is the actual cost impact to be able to execute on this?
Yeah, for example, the urban agriculture plan, we put it here. We anticipate, probably for your information, later on in the council meeting, there will be a discussions on the Edmonton Metropolitan Plan, the regional agricultural master plan there. And there is one implementation item that requires municipalities to develop our own urban agricultural plan. So we will be starting working on that as soon as the EMRB approved that plan. So we will be developing terms of reference for that. And there will be some requirements from the regional plan that will be setting up the scope of the plan. So we will be basically developing the project scope and whether we can do it in-house or we would need to hire external help to do it. So that is the reason why we cannot put a definitive resource request at this point of time, because we just know we have to do those things, but we don't know the scope and how much resources, whether the administration can do it internally or we require external help. So that is why we would come back to council and present it to council for further approvals.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the answer there. And I guess if we're approving this here, we're giving, if we do this, we give it the green light. I would imagine the next council, the budget process there, if you needed additional resources to be able to implement this, that's the time where you would be coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had, Your Worship. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Congratulate on the presentation and the report. There's a lot of worthwhile and useful information in there. And I wanted to ask a specific question regarding, and I'm not sure if this is to the presenters or to administration, regarding 2.4.4 energy. There's a target set out. It's on page 26 of 175 of my agenda, which is page 16 of the report. The interim target that's established, it's derived from Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change Target, 2016. The interim target's given us 30% reduction in greenhouse gases emissions below 2005 levels by 2030, net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Question is, are we talking about the city of Beaumont and its operation and operations, or are we talking about the entire municipality, private, public, and everything else that lives here?
Sorry, I missed the page number. I'm still looking for that reference.
26 of 175 or page 16 of the plan.
Page 16 of the plan. I think this is the community-wide. It is not a specific thing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I think it is community-wide.
So that's the whole community. Everybody lives, works, and
Yeah.
plays here. Okay, not just the municipality, not just municipal operations. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any thoughts at this point as to how we would achieve those? Those are very ambitious goals on an optimistic timeframe. Are there any thoughts on how we would achieve that now, or is that something that would be brought forward to council at later dates?
I think first of all, we need to start monitoring it, and we have an approach to establish the baseline first, and then we will work with, because it is, we have to work with our partners too. So like the regional partners, the organizations, and then we can pinpoint to if there is any issues, then we know what issues that we have to deal with and come up with solutions to address that. So yeah, at this point of time, I think the first thing to do is to establish that a well-rounded measurement and monitoring framework, and it is only one, we're looking only at one data indicators now, but everything would have basically integrate and interplay with each other. So we cannot just look at one data and make a conclusion out of it. So first of all, I think we need to establish that framework first, and then looking at the how not just one area of measure, for example, energy or waste or water, then everything would be able to giving us like Councillor, when you get this in the big picture, so I think that is the first step, is to establish that monitoring and measurement framework, and then identify what are the areas that we can improve on, and then develop the sort of fine-tuning actions to achieve that.
And if I may, just to provide some additional context, this target in particular is set as aspirational, and also understanding particularly that through Action SP4, which is focused on the Partners for Climate Protection program that is administered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. The City of Beaumont signed a letter of intent in 2015, and the aim is to pick that back up, because part of that program, of course, brings the City of Beaumont into conversation with a lot of other municipalities exploring the same challenge, but also there's a significant inventorying and measurement requirement here, to Mr. Wong's point, with respect to data measurement and monitoring. So the ambition is to have a target that is very much reflective of the City of Beaumont's context. It's just that's forthcoming with significant investigation through that action. So we did want to provide something, of course, understanding, particularly as it relates to the environment. GHG emissions are a major point of consideration and contention. So that was the thinking behind those choices.
Okay, thank you. So, so this is aspirational. There aren't, from what I've heard, any concrete measures yet. Those will be things that will be derived later. And the first step is monitoring, baselining where we are to start. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Daniluk. Well, I am going to ask everybody to sort of move the mics a little closer to you. They are coming through kind of muted, so.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is about the, I guess, the review and the timing of the reviews. So when I first read it, I thought, well, 5 years is a long time to wait for that. Then I read somewhere else where it said every year there would be an update. But on the chart that we were shown tonight, I didn't see any updates coming to council in the first 4 or 5 years. Is that, maybe I just didn't read that chart right? Because again, my point would be I would want this to come back to a new council and have them have a look at it and not wait 5 years. So can you just give me some assurance that that wouldn't be 5 years before it comes back to council again?
My understanding is that there will be an annual review of the implementation progress.
Okay.
And I believe at that time, there will be a progress report coming to council. And also during the review, that if there is any, there is a need for doing a little bit of adjustment on the implementation, even actions and strategies, we would come forward to council and let council make the decision for us too. So.
And if I may add one other point.
And if I read the report correctly, the first one's due in Q1 of 2023. So after a full year of implementation.
Yeah, after a full year. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, that's great. And the other, now I hear an echo. Okay.
Yeah, now it's weird.
Okay, not used to this. I'm used to Zooming now. The other was the on-demand, the transit on-demand. So similar to my councillor colleagues here, it seems like we're approving that pilot by approving this plan. And I would hope we'd have more detail before we would make a step like that. So it would come back before we assign before council assigns any budget dollars to that.
CEO?
I believe the on-demand pilot is.
Councillor Barnhart, if
Sorry,
I could.
CEO.
Sorry. The bus on demand is currently gone out for public consultation, and there has been no budget dollars set aside for the bus on demand. So until we come back with a request to council, that doesn't approve this project at all.
Could you get a little closer to the mic? Sorry, it's tough.
Currently, there's no budget dollars allocated for bus on demand. So once we complete the public consultation, which is occurring right away, then we'll come back to council with the recommendation. And at that time, if you want to implement it, we'll look for.
I just wanted to clarify because it sounded like we were approving something, but we haven't had all the information
Concept.
yet. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
That's fine. Follow up, are you good? All right, Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Hendricks, and that'll close out round one.
Yeah, the presenters this evening. I have one quick question, if you don't mind. Mind joining me on page 15 of the presentation? Middle of the page talks about supporting information, talking about in 2020, Beaumont had open space system, 150 hectares of parks open space, 38 kilometers of trails, representing 14% of the total land area municipality. My question is, how do we compare to our other municipalities, such as perhaps City of Leduc, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, similar size to us? Do we compare to them at 14%? Are we equal to them? Are we leaders in that area? Or we need to do some more work to make sure we have enough green space for our citizens to recreate themselves and enjoy our city? So how are we looking at comparison-wise at that 14% level, please? If you can do it tonight, if you can't, that's okay, but it's a ballpark idea how we're doing with our allocation of green space for our citizens.
Yeah, if you can bear with me, I can see if I can pull up that number because I would have encountered It's very likely I would have encountered that during the municipal benchmarking review of other municipalities. It's just stored in the archives, so to speak.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Follow-up, Counselor?
No, just the one question. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Counselor Hendricks. And for those members of council wishing to speak in round two, please get on the list. Counselor Hendricks.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Just back to the discussion about climate change and page 75 of the document, our page 85 of the agenda. Just want to understand correctly where we have the targets listed. Beaumont has in brackets current, and it states no target, but it's tied to the FCM discussions. We will be doing something. We will be implementing something, and the timing will be prior to the 5-year cycle. I'm assuming. So is there a subset? Is there a sub-calendar? Is there some other mission statement that takes us to that list? So we have a target that we can add similar to all the other jurisdictions? Thank you.
I think to set the target, we need to, first of all, go back to 2015, the FCM the package, and the ask what the municipality had signed on to, and then it's also comparing to other municipalities. And probably the biggest thing for my understanding, my personal opinion is how much can the city do initially, and then set the target in initial targets, and then move on to the ultimate target. So I think the first step would be to go back to 2015, the report, and also what actually is this climate program that we are subscribing to, and then actually there will be a full report that is coming back to council, and then council will have the opportunity to work with the municipalities, and also we will be doing a lot more research on setting up the target, because 2015, 2021 now, when we are coming back to council with 2022, a lot has been changed too. So yeah, at that time there will be more discussions and more understanding on what kind of targets we need to focus on. Yeah.
And if I may, while Jeff is scouring the archive, if I can refer you to page 46 of the plan document. In key steps, it identifies some of the key steps related to those milestones. So it identifies as milestone 2 and 3 is the second bullet point there. Set emissions reduction targets. The aim is by the end of Q4 2026. Knowing that the setting the baseline inventory and forecast is a significant amount of work. So that's the current timing. And again, with the internal quarterly reviews, the annual reviews, that can be revisited and accelerated if need be.
Well,
And just
That's exactly my point. I think we don't want to wait 5 years. I think we just saw some more discussions about climate change just recently again. And I think that, a year from now is, I think, a long time to start implementing something. So I'd be all in favor of speeding up the timelines and getting this process moving. So thanks.
So that we're bringing to a close the comments and questions from round one. We'll open up round two. Councillor Van Newkirk, and then there's nobody else on the speakers list.
Thank you. Just trying to join together a couple of the thoughts that I've heard and the comments here. During the presentation earlier from the presenter, there was a mention of joining the regional airshed. And just a quick question on that. Is there a cost to joining that airshed? And is there an associated board or committee that would be assigned to elected officials surrounding that airshed?
Councillor, when you could, I had the opportunity to talk to the executive director of the Carroll Region Airshed a couple weeks ago to a month ago, and to join the membership, the municipality's membership fee would be $2,500, and actually there is currently budget for the city to participate in some of the environmental organizations. we are part of the Alberta Recycling Association, so there will be some membership. Currently, we have some budgets about that. And with regarding to whether there will be requirement for member of council to sit on the board, there are municipal representatives sitting on the airshed board. And currently, I believe there are 2, City of Edmonton, and if I remember correctly, it is City of Adelaide that are sitting on the board. And they are representing municipal. Not every municipal members would have a member sitting on the board, but definitely we will be member of the airshed. And I didn't go into details asking him about the how that board is elected, but I believe that there will be some opportunities when there is an election of board members or whatever. So
Yeah, and then subsequently, would there be cost associated with, you know, airshed monitoring equipment and those types of things? Would that come out of this as well?
Currently, they are behind because of the resources they have, and a lot of the situation right now is they have a lot of municipalities. I'm not only talking about municipal members. They have industry members and other NGO groups participating in the airshed too. But looking at just the municipal members, they have other priority areas. For example, City of the Deal, new school industrial areas, they are on their priority list, but currently they don't have any monitoring stations there. So that will be a longer term, and they're working on the financial resources to do it. But currently Beaumont has 2 passive monitoring stations. So they will keep on using those stations to monitor some of the air qualities. But being passive means that it is not continuously monitoring the air quality, but they would send a technician to come and collect the data from the station. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I see no more requests to speak, so I'd like to close out the conversation. This is a great plan. I thank council for their comments and queries around surrounding resources and implementation. Because once again, it's a plan that if we don't implement it, it just sits on the table and we spent a lot of money for nothing. So appreciate the hard work. Mr. Wong, give you one last opportunity, or the presenters, to make it quick before we call a question.
I think we have a great plan in front of you, council, and we learned from the past experience that that is why we have the 14 actions that we think the project team thinks that this will give the most impactful solutions to the City of Beaumont as a start, because we need to build momentum first, and then hopefully with this first round, we will get the momentum, we will get the interest from the public, and then the next round will be not just 14, it will be a lot more actions that will be taken and take the Beaumont for the environmental sustainability as a lead communities. So,
thank you very much. Appreciate the final closing comments. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve our environmental master plan as presented? Councillor Stout. Say it. I'll turn it on.
Yeah, I'm fussing with the controls as well. Yes, so moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Wong. Appreciate your time tonight, and thank you to the presenters. It's always great when you can come out in the evening and see us. So appreciate your time.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Which brings us to item 8B, the Q2 financial update. And I think we have Mr. DeBlanco online.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. Before you tonight is a quarterly financial report as at the end of Q2, which is June 30th, 2021. The report is intended to provide a mid-year financial update on reserve balances, the municipal operating, utility, and capital budgets, as well as provide forecasts to year end. On the municipal operating budget, I'll draw council's attention to attachment 1, which is page 95 of the agenda package. And this provides information on the city's municipal operating budget. So in response to the economic pressures Beaumont ratepayers face from the continued COVID-19 pandemic, City Council approved a 0% tax increase for the 2021 budget year. At the 2021 budget deliberations, administration indicated that if there was any shortfall of revenue or increased expenditures from the pandemic, they are intended to be managed within a normal year's operating budget. So for this reason, the 2021 municipal operating budget did not factor in any adjustments such as reserve draws to offset impacts from the pandemic. Should any deficit be incurred at the end of the year, a draw from the financial stabilization reserve might be warranted and then would be proposed by administration for approval at such time. The pandemic has continued to have an impact on the city's municipal operating budget into 2021. The second and third waves in Alberta in the spring of 2021 and the corresponding restrictions have resulted in some service disruption in many service areas. These disruptions have resulted in administration forecasting a reduction in department-specific revenue of approximately $3.4 million. The departments, once again, with the greatest revenue reductions are recreation and community and social development, specifically childcare. Administration has sought to decrease the city's operating expenses to offset any lost revenue that was previously discussed. Through these efforts, administration is forecasting a decrease of operating expenses of approximately $2.7 million. Cities utilize the remaining funds carried forward from the municipal operating support transfer from the province to offset a portion of this lost revenue. This amount, which is approximately $400,000, has been included in the other corporate revenue line item on attachment 1. Based on the estimates provided by department directors, the consolidated result is a projected deficit of approximately $400,000 or 0.8 of the operating budget. As stated before, administration will recommend that if there is a deficit at year end in the municipal operating budget, that amount be drawn from the financial stabilization reserve. Next, I'll draw your attention to attachment 2 or page 97 of the agenda package for the utility operating budget. Utility revenue is forecasted to be approximately $700,000 in excess of what was budgeted, driven by increased utility consumption at residential properties during the pandemic from increased amount of people working at home. An increase in expenses of $500,000 is driven directly by this increased consumption through the purchase and processing of water and wastewater from their respective commissions. The net result is a forecasted surplus in the utility operating budget of $200,000, which equates to 1.8 of the budget. In a similar manner to the municipal operating budget, administration would recommend that any surplus at year end be transferred to the utility reserve. Nextly, on attachment 3 or page 99 of the agenda package is a capital budget summary. As at June 30th, 39% of the approved capital budget has been spent, and based on forecasts provided, administration is projecting savings of 2.8 on the overall 2021 capital budget. Notable project that is forecasted to come in significantly less than budgeted is Range Road 241 construction, with an anticipated savings of $724,000. As this project is funded from offsite levies, any unspent amount would remain in the road's offsite levy account for any future offsite levy projects. Administration has also provided a schematic timeline of major projects as supplemental information in attachment 5. Next, on our reserve balances, attachment 4 or page 101 of the agenda package, is anticipated that municipal and utility operating budgets will require the budgeted reserve draws of $1.2 million and $0.1 million respectively. For capital reserves, $2.5 million of the budgeted $2.6 million is forecast to be required to fund renewal capital projects. Administration will recommend that any budgeted reserve funds not required for renewal projects will remain in their respective reserves. It's forecast that the annual reserve allocation will be $200,000 less than budgeted, which is due to decreased interest rates on reserve balances from lowered interest rates in the year. On the overall budget or financial impact, as mentioned previously, should the city incur a operating deficit, a draw from reserve would be required to balance the budget, with the most appropriate funding source being the financial stabilization reserve. It is administration's intent to reduce the 400,000 operating deficit to zero through an increased focus on reducing operating expenditures and finding internal efficiencies, therefore not requiring this reserve draw. This concludes my presentation. At this time, administration can take any questions from council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blanco. You did address my one question as it refers to the deficit. I mean, I know $400,000 deficit is a lot better than the 600,000 to 1.2 million we were facing at this time last year. But I do appreciate that administration is going to undertake some cost restraint measures to eliminate that before we get to the end of the year. And as we have a third of the year to go, I don't, the way you guys have been efficient in spending money, I don't think we're going to have a problem, or you're going to have a problem. So I appreciate that. So open it up for questions and comments from members of council. Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Stout, and Councillor Barnhart. Everybody's on quick tonight.
I'll start with, thank you, Mayor Stewart. The really quick question. Thank you, Mr. Blanco, for the presentation. Just going to the capital attachment, in the narrative in the request for decision, we talked about potentially some capital projects maybe not being done this year. Is there anything on this list in the attachment 3 that you think, based on your expectations, that any capital project may not be completed this year from that list, perhaps, at this point? Thank you. Just the one question for now, Mayor Stewart. I'll yield the floor to a fellow councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, thank you. My question is regarding an item on attachment 5. The 2021 council approved project schematic timeline, and was hoping to get a verbal update on the Ken Nickel Regional Recreational Center revitalization and the date shown for completion, and how that may or may not impact the user groups this coming fall.
CEO or Mr. Blanco?
Sorry, just make sure I'm looking at the correct amount through your worship to Councillor Hendricks. We're talking about the Ken Nickel Regional Recreation Center revitalization on the schematic timeline. Yes, it is slotted to be completed by the end of December, which is the aligns with the program requirements for that grant. In terms of impacting user groups within the facility, I'd yield the question to one of the members of administration for the specific line item there.
CEO?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Curtis. I was actually just told that today that the first rink, I think, is rink number 1. They've started, and they're actually cooling the surface right now. And then they will kick into rink number 2, and we are not expecting it to impact any users. If it is, then we will communicate that to them. Things are going well.
Hello?
For good news. So thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk?
Yeah, thank you. From a budgetary standpoint, I see good news, but it is early on some large projects, so I'll leave that at that for now. Just going back to the timeline schematic, I did find that a little bit difficult to follow. Are there any projects in 2021 that are behind so far?
CEO?
Sorry, I was dealing with another issue. Can you please restate that, Councillor Van Newkirk?
Yeah, you bet. I was finding the schematic timeline just a little bit difficult to follow to determine if things are on timeline or behind. Just wondering, are any of the projects behind at all, or are they as far as would be expected this time of the season? Thank you.
Actually, and we've got a heck of a lot of projects on the go, and everything is on time. And at this point, as you can see from the budget, pretty close to on budget too. Everybody's doing. It's been a great construction season for weather-wise.
Yeah, despite not getting rain, that's actually been helpful to that, where it's been a hindrance in other areas. I have seen some local user groups posting up photos of things as they've been done, and 241 does look like it's coming along fast and hard. So thank you for that. That's all, your worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Newkirk. Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Remember, I pushed the button. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. Three quick, I hope quick questions from me, Mr. Blanco, and I'm afraid I'm nitpicking a little bit here. At least for the first one. Page 92 of 175. It's forecast the annual reserve allocation will be $0.2 less than budgeted. I think you covered this in your presentation, but that's really 0.2 million, I assume.
Through your worship to Councillor Stout, yes, that would be correct. That would be 0.2 million or 200,000. Okay, thank you. Good news on the 241 coming in at, I noticed the 15% under budget. That's great news because I think oftentimes construction project budgets are greeted with a bit of, what shall we say, skepticism, cynicism, this has come in well under budget. It's great to see. I think that's really good news. I assume then is that partly due to the good weather, or is there another factor at work here? Because it'd be great if we could do other projects at 15% under budget, construction projects 15% under budget.
Through your worship to Councillor Stout, that particular project, I believe the resulting under variance would be due to a favorable tender process. If there's a member of administration in council chambers right now that has more detail on that, but I believe the forecast provided by the project manager was a favorable tender process on that particular project that came in. All the tenders came in quite under the forecasted amount.
CEO?
Yeah, and I don't have anything else to offer. I believe that's exactly where it came in, but we can look and get more detailed information back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one more regarding the reserves, and this is probably my lack of understanding. We streamlined the reserve considerably in the last budget and reduced the number. So we've got operating reserves and capital reserves. Operating reserves for operating shortfalls and capital reserves for capital ones. But then when I look at the attachment 4 on page 101, I noticed that we've got capital reserves, but 2 departments made operating draws on those. So my question really is, why do we do that? Shouldn't those be drawn from an operating draw, or am I from an operating budget? I'm sorry, operating reserve, or am I not understanding something here?
Mr. Michael?
Through your worship to Councillor Stout, yes, that is a notable distinction between operating and capital reserves. Council does have the option to draw from reserves for either capital or operating requirements. In the instance of the operating draw from a technology replacement reserve, for instance, that is for some technology equipment that would be below capitalization criteria, although it would be a capital item. So therefore it appears in the operating budget and in that operating draws line item. In a similar fashion, the economic development draw there is for some one-time expenditures that are economic development related, albeit operating. It aligns more with the department than the distinction between operating and capital.
Okay, I think I understand. So it's a bit of an accounting fiction, or that these are a convention, not a fiction. That's the wrong word. That these are operating draws rather than capital draws. You're still spending them one time on pieces of equipment.
Through your worship to Council, yes, that how you phrased it there would be accurate.
Thank you.
Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions, Mr. Blanco. And the first one, I don't want this to sound like a cheeky question. I just want you to know that it seems serendipitous that the $400,000 turned out to be the $400,000 that you needed for the department director's consolidated results projected deficit of 0.4 million, as well as you received a grant for transfer from most for 0.4 million. So was there some opportunity to work towards that number, or is that just serendipitous?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, so it's actually the other way. If we're looking at the deficit in isolation of the most transfer. Let's say, for instance, if we did not have that $400,000 available, the forecasted deficit would actually be 800,000.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable that that's how that went. Okay. Second question then is about the impact on childcare. COVID has had a tremendous impact on childcare right across the province, probably across the world. And I'm just wondering if we anticipate things going any better in the childcare area. Maybe that's a question to come back at a later time. I don't know, but I'm just concerned about the enrollment. Has it come back up? The revenue's up? Or are we still suffering from low enrollment as many daycares are right now?
As far as I'm aware, through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, the enrollment is likely less than a normal year, but I believe now that restrictions have been lifted, that there is improved enrollment, obviously from the spring. And once again, based on the forecast provided from the department director, is looking to be increased, obviously from the first 2 quarters of the year.
So we're fairly optimistic then for this year. Sounds like you have some optimism for this year, Mr. Blanco. It's not a period where we have to do more promotion or encourage enrollment.
Well, to Councillor Barnhart, that might be outside my realm of expertise. I'll yield the floor to another member of admin if they have more insight on childcare specifically.
CEO.
Yeah, I can get some specific numbers back to you. From what I'm told, talking to Kim, is we're pretty much there. We had some openings at the after school. Expect those to be filled in September as well.
Okay.
Then we've got our federal government and our $10 a day daycare, which is a wild card right now. We don't have any information on it, so I don't know what that means.
Okay. No, it's happening in many daycares right now, so I just was curious. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, maybe just to wrap and close it up, and administration, you're not going to toot your own horn, so I will. But just I thank you, Curtis, and the team for again delivering this in the incredibly uncertain time. The results that you show here, they don't just happen, and so maybe just a comment to the public. The work that administration does to get us to this point, especially given the 0% increase that we asked of you guys to hit, and still to be able to hit these numbers here is incredibly well done. So thank you for the diligence on this. A heck of a job to get to this point. I won't go into capital projects as to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's comment. Early on, we'll wait until we get later in the fall before we start to look at some of those timelines. But overall, the Q2 report here is really, really impressive. So thanks for the work on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGowan. Couldn't have summed it up better myself. So appreciate that. Is there a member of council willing to move that council receive the 2021 quarterly financial report and attachments 1 to 5 as information, please? Councillor Danlock.
So move, your worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Call question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Appreciate that. Brings us to item 9. Thank you very much, Mr. DeBlanco. Appreciate your time tonight. Which brings us to item 9, bylaws. We have none. Councillor inquiries and reports. Start off with councillor inquiries. Is there a member of council that has questions for administration this evening? Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, thank you, your worship. 2 questions on Town and Country Days for administration. The first one is I'm just looking to understand what what's being done to ensure that residents know about the event. There must be a campaign, an information campaign upcoming of some kind. Right now, I'm finding that it's pretty, or it's not widely known in the community that the event is going on, and just wondering how admin is shaping up to increase that message. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, through the mayor to yourself. Town and Country Days and the the 50th Street, closing off the 50th Street and the celebration notices have started to go out. They went out last Thursday to the businesses, explaining what we're doing and asking them if they're going to participate. And they have until August 18th to tell us if they have any specific plans, of which we will help communicate that through our marketing. We've reached out for parking in the area, and I'm going off an email that I just got here because I'm just getting back. So we've arranged with those business owners that are going to graciously allow us to use their parking for different spaces. As for communications, we're just finalizing some of the details, and then it will be communicated out through our normal channels to all business and residents. We've got a 4-page newspaper ad coming out August 27th. So yeah, you would know all this. You were the one that put it together, or you're letting me hang here. Is there anything I missed, Councilor Hendricks?
I can see the grin over my shoulder here.
Well done, actually. Well done. No, that's exactly it. There is a full communications plan for Town and Country Days, and looking forward to people getting back from their holidays. And there is stuff also already on the website, and I believe we've done a couple interviews with the paper, and but look forward to a very, very ambitious weekend. A bunch of the user groups are starting their meetings, online meetings. I've got some starting tomorrow night, Thursday night, with the soapbox survey people, you name it. So all the groups are getting wound up to have a great September 10th, 11th, and 12th. So thank you.
Right on, thank you. That hits off both my questions on Town and Country Days. The second one is into more of an operational type piece, but it's around service request Beaumont. And it's that time of year where things are happening in the community, weeds are growing, people are doing stuff. And I'm just wondering if administration can provide another update to the community on using this and it being the most effective tool to resolve service related issues. I think it would be a recommunication, but I'm wondering if administration could explain, more clearly how it works, and more importantly, why it is the most effective way to get things done for service-related issues.
I'll take a shot at this, and then I might have to follow up afterwards. Part that I'm hearing is that we need to get more information out. I know, speaking with Jennifer today, or an email, they talked about some updates that they made to the service request tracker. I think you moved it location, and looking at might be to help me to make it easier for people to be able to find it on the website. I think there's also some internal changes that are being made to it, and then we will definitely get those blasted out to our residents.
Yeah, I think the key part is, one is, yes, where it's at. It is fairly easy to find. So, you scroll down the web page 3/4 of the way and look for the little symbol and click on that and then follow the way through. But I think one of the pieces that we might be able to twig on a little bit more is to explain to the community why this is the best route to go. It's an input based tracking system that, takes your service request, diverts it to the right people in the municipality that are employed to handle that type of thing. So, it's a tracked system, and it's automated, and everything that goes in gets attention, right? So there's my elevator speech. If you want to bundle that up, go ahead. But I think that the more people can trust how this is, or where the system is, how it works, why it works, and how its performance is tracked by city employees, might give some comfort to people using it just a little bit more. So I know I'm an operational guy, so probably those questions are tending toward me because people know I have a passion there. That's fine. And sorry to those on the receiving end that are receiving multiple from me. That's just the way it goes. So that's all I got for tonight, Your Worship. Thanks.
Appreciate that, Councilor. Councilor McGosway.
Yeah, thank you. Mine's part report, part inquiry. So I'll just take that and go with it. Just around transit. So thanks to administration for sharing that information out. Obviously, our transit is up and running again as of the 23rd of August. So thank you for communicating that out. Just a couple of comments and then some questions. So first, that this is not the new Regional Transit Commission. That does not get up and running for another year until that's operational. in terms of the actual service being delivered. So the services will be the same as folks have been used to, but with a couple of tweaks. And so I've got a couple of questions around that for administration, just to clarify, both here and then I'm sure Mr. Berezowski is going to be all over this. But one of the big things to come out of it, we've been looking at this Smart Pass for a long time, and it was announced this ARC card. And that's exciting. It means you can tap on and tap off like the Oyster system in London and a lot of other municipalities around the world. So this is really exciting for us. The questions that have come in is just around, first off, where can Beaumont residents buy the ARC pass?
CEO.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to you, Councillor Monkoff-Swain, and thanks for the heads up on this question. So I'm going to be going from my phone to my email as I'm pulling this information together. So currently the ARC card is being piloted there's 500 pilot tiers, as it was explained to me, during the month of September. So it's not actually going to be available for any of us. And this information is on our website. I'm told there's a link to SmartFare, and I'll send it to council. But once they're available, the cards can be purchased at City Hall, at the BSRC, and at the Community Center, CCBCC. We'll get some communications out. When the piloting is finished, we will be given 200 ARC cards. They're valued about $6 a piece, apparently. And our plan and the idea of the Regional Smart Fare Committee was to promote the use of these ARC cards, that we will be giving them out first come, first serve. So for the first 200, so they can try them out. But afterwards, yes, they'll be able to be purchased at City Hall, BSRC, and the CCVCC.
Thank you. And a couple of follow-ups, if you don't mind. I'll just keep rattling them off here. So included in that is the agreement with the UPass system. So not asking you a question on this, because I didn't give you the heads up on that, but just as more of an announcement. I know Mr. Berezowski has talked about that, is that, we worked tirelessly to ensure that UPass system worked for Beaumont as well, so that our university students could use that to get on the bus and get into the city. So that's great. The second piece I wanted to touch on is just the location of where that's going to go as of the 23rd. So historically, the bus has gone to Century Park, but for various reasons, that is not going to occur. So it's now heading to Heritage Valley, just south of the Henday. And so my question, obviously, that's going to impact commuter timing, and people have to get to work on time. And so I'm just wondering if we have an idea of what that looks like, what that's going to look like for residents to get there. Is there a dedicated commuter bus that's going to take our bus people to Century Park? Or is there a bus that is going to skip Century Park and go ahead to Southgate? Like, how does that work for residents? Do we have any anticipation on timelines? Are we going to send a few guinea pigs out there to get an idea so we can communicate that out to the public?
Okay. What I was told is the distance from Beaumont to Heritage Valley is similar to what it was to Century Park. I think 20 minutes was the estimate. There's a 700X bus, express bus, that runs from Heritage Valley to Century Park. It departs every 10 minutes, and that's a further 14 minutes. So if you did the math on that, you could add 25 minutes to your trip. If you get there and the bus has just left, you got to wait 10 minutes, and then it's about a 14-minute ride to Century Park. This is a regular ETS express bus. You use your transfer and you get on it and you go. Something I would urge our riders to consider is have a look at maybe catching an earlier bus if you need to get there on time. So if you leave earlier for here, because what's the distance between ours? I think ours is 30 minutes. So there you can make up your 25 minutes, but that's the way it's estimated. And of course, that's only until the Millwoods Transit Center opens. And the estimate for that, and I know I jumped the gun here, but you gave me a heads up, I appreciate that, is ETS is telling us right now, December 2021, we should be riding to Millwoods. And I don't know the time for that, but it was shorter than the 20 minutes to Century. You probably know that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so I guess the message there is, a bit of interim pain to get to Heritage Valley up to Century Park and in, but that's going to be a much faster shot once we get to Millwoods there. So awesome. Thank you for that update, and looking forward to getting back on the bus.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. 3 quick questions that the CIO has already answered, but I'm going to repeat them here for the benefit of anybody who's watching or listening. So in the event that a resident needs to report dumped garbage or residual construction waste to be cleared up, I had supposed that the best method would be to raise a service tracker request, but I gather that's not the way to go.
Sorry, there's two ways you could do that. You put a service request tracker and it'll get rerouted to municipal enforcement, or else you can contact municipal enforcement directly and their numbers online. So either way, it'll get to them.
Great, thank you. And then does the responsibility to clean up that garbage or debris change if it's on public land or private land?
Well, yeah, the private land, it's the private owner's responsibility. Unfortunately, those things are not always cut and dry. The waste could have been blown in from somewhere else. So we try and work with the resident and get the best solution. It's not always just black and white.
Right, there's some room for interpretation. Okay, thank you. And then do we have what do we currently consider to be an acceptable response time to resolve a request or of that nature?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the policy says. I'm going to assume that they're going to immediately get a bounce back if they send it to the service request telling it's in motion so that we've received it. What ME's turnaround is, I'd have to find that out, and I will find that out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Barnard?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go back to the transit issue, if I could. CAO Schwartz, the concern that's been raised to me is that the cost of the shuttle from the Heritage Valley to Century Park is pretty substantial. And I don't know if you have that information. And I don't know if what I have is entirely accurate, but it is causing some consternation, and I think that's going to affect ridership. So I know that we have plans in place, but I wonder if there's anything we have the power to do or the capacity to do to help in the short term, because I wouldn't want to see people not, school starting and we want people back and want normalcy back. Is there any way to affect the cost to bring it in line with what it was before, potentially? And the second consideration is the timing. But I think people will have less concern about the timing if the cost doesn't go up as much as it's been said to me that it will go up. Something to the effect of $280 a month to make that work, and that's just not going to fly. So I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do.
I'm not sure where you're getting that information, and maybe mine's inaccurate, but I'm told there is no extra cost. That they pay for their fare here in Beaumont, they take the transfer at Heritage and they go to.
So apparently it's the Edmonton shuttle that's charging them extra. So if that's not correct, then maybe we need to get that information clarified, because I will tell you this one thing. Unfortunately, I know it's summer months. People were calling probably the front desk, and when they weren't getting the information, they were going to Edmonton Transit and getting information. And I can see already that's going to give confusion, because there might be whoever answers the phone there is going to tell them something about Edmonton Transit, not necessarily about the Beaumont arrangement. So information and cost and timing, I think, are real critical. Anything we can do to make that better in the short term, I think we should consider it.
Councilor Osway?
Yeah, sorry for jumping in there. So I think where the problem could potentially be is, so it used to be $5 to get from here to Century Park. If you were going to buy just cash on hand, or you get the 10 passes for $45. But let's just use cash, right? So if you're just going to Century Park, and if you're stopping at Century Park, then you're done. You've only paid your $5. If you're then carrying on the train to Southgate or downtown, you pay your $3.25 or whatever. So if you're going out of Heritage Valley and you're going to downtown, then you're still paying the same. It's still going to be the $3.25, or maybe it's up to $3.50 now in the city. So that's not the difference, but it's for those people who are actually getting off at Century Park, who wouldn't ever get onto an ETS bus system. That's where there could be a potential cost impact. But anyone who's going downtown, they're paying the same rate anyway, $3.25 for that day, or they're getting there. If they've got a monthly pass, then it's not going to change. That there isn't an additional cost for that commuter from Heritage Valley. So it's as always, some information here with no answers from me. So if you could just find out what if that is the case, and if there is a way, and pretty straightforward to talk to our residents who are doing, because there aren't many, talk to a few people on the bus, not many get off at Century Park. For sure, but I think that's the only time where the cost would be prohibitive there, where they're actually now having to pay to get to Century Park, whereas before they wouldn't have to because they would just get off the bus and go. But let's look into it. I'm sure
it would really help to have that information really clear as soon as possible, because people are making their decisions now about how they're going to transfer back and forth.
I just got clarification on that, and it's exactly as you explained it. If I'm going to Heritage, I pay my fare here, and then at Heritage Valley, if I'm going to Century Place and then getting on the LRT, I'm going to pay the $3.25, get my transfer, and I'm gone. But you're correct. If I'm going to Century Park, that's my end destination, then I will incur an extra $3.25 that I wouldn't have this time last year,
which is prohibitive. So let's look into that, and hopefully, the transit users will be in touch.
Let's leave that with me.
And we've got a week, the last week of August, before people look to make monthly decisions. And so we'll have a better idea on timing and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more requests to speak, I do have one question of my own this evening. In terms of land use bylaw review, I've been receiving some feedback from some business owners about signage. When are we planning to go back for consultation and do a review on that portion of the bylaw? Ms. Dargy.
Thank you, Your Worship, for that question. The land use bylaw isn't scheduled to be fully reviewed for another 4 years, but we are doing every 6 months through the monitoring program. We're looking at the regulations and then determining what regulations need to be updated based on that monitoring and the results of the kind of applications we get in, and what may need to be changed. So if regulations we're finding are difficult to work through or aren't serving the needs of what the intended regulation was supposed to achieve, looking at modifying those. With signage in particular, we weren't planning on doing a full-scale review of signage. There are a couple of areas in the city that do have to have signage looked at, and one of them is in the downtown area. And so we are looking to do that in the fall.
And that'll include public consultation and a report back to council?
Yes, always with land use bylaw, we do public consultation.
Okay, that answers my one question this evening. There were members of council wishing to make a statement this evening. All right, brings us to the next item, which is the CAO's update.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council, members of the public. Just a few things quickly. One you've already covered, and that's a commuter transit that, of course, is starting up on August 23rd. At this point, we're in consultations with DTS and with our regional partners around masking and whether that's going to be mandatory or not, effective. And the latest discussions we've had with ETS, of course, the biggest regional partner, is we're leaning towards encouraging but not mandatory. But communications will come out before August 23rd. Hazardous waste roundup occurs this Saturday, August 13th, from 8:30 in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's at the operations facility on 510. We will accept hazardous waste, electronic waste, and we also have a paper shredder there, as we have had in years past. So come on by, and there'll be folks set up to help you out and get rid of that waste for you. I guess the last thing I would say, and it goes back to the theme we talked about tonight. No, one more thing I want to talk about, and that's COVID in Beaumont. As of yesterday, we're back up to 11 active cases. So we're not out of this yet. We got to continue to take care of each other and then continue to abide by the recommendations as we're comfortable with. Of course, everybody has their choices to make. The last thing I want to say is just to sum up that we have a lot of projects that are advancing very well. It's been an extraordinary construction season. We were really worried about the price of materials. It hasn't affected us negatively to the extent that we thought it could. So that explains why we're in budget, within budget. But I want to thank the business and residents for their patience and understanding. As I said, it's been very aggressive, and there's been a lot of working areas that there hasn't been in the fact that the people that are bordering on Four Seasons Park, you see how it's ripped up right now. I'm told the construction crew are doing an excellent job. I'm told that the residents have been informed and are satisfied with that. The construction, they even shut down earlier in the evening so they can get more peace and quiet and less dust. But I can't imagine what that's been like for them all summer, but we're almost there. And thank you very much. As I said, they have been patient and very understanding. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Brings us to item 13, notice of motion. We have one on the floor, and then we'll take new ones for those members of council wishing to make them. Which brings us to item 13A from Councillor Van Newkirk. We will allow our city clerk to introduce, and then the floor is yours, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. According to the meeting procedures bylaw, once the notice of motion is made, it's placed on the next regular council meeting agenda. At the July 13th, 2021 regular council meeting, Councillor Van Newkirk made the following notice of motion: the council direct administration to provide a report that outlines the approaches being considered to create partnerships, help support, or directly offer community events that assist with economic development and building a thriving community. This evening, administration is looking for council's direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. Again, that notice of motion was that council direct administration to provide a report that outlines the approaches being considered to create partnerships, help support, or directly offer community events that assist with economic development and build a thriving community. So I brought this notice of motion forward to formalize and begin the conversation surrounding what can the city do to support the many groups' efforts when events are planned in Beaumont and events are brought to Beaumont. The keywords for me in this notice of motion are partnerships and support, as any and all events held in Beaumont have the potential to bring people to Beaumont and ultimately use local resources, business or volunteers within Beaumont. A couple of recent examples. I came back from out of town. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. Ribs are something that I have a passion for, and Rib Fest was in Beaumont. Presumably that event would have needed some permits from the city in order to host that at the BSRC. And it wasn't widely known in and around Beaumont that the event was occurring. And I had heard anecdotally that they needed to shut down early, which sucked. I also heard anecdotally that there were 45-minute lineups in Fort McMurray for a similar event. So I hope that RibFest does consider Beaumont again as a potential host city. Earlier in the year, we also had a drive-in movie hosted by the Beaumont District Ag Society, and there wasn't broad knowledge that event was occurring either. There was a steady stream of traffic going in, but there wasn't broad knowledge of that event. So what I would like everyone to think about is, imagine a time in the near future when residents of Beaumont are all collectively more aware of the events and activities that are happening in Beaumont. How many times have you heard from people, I didn't even know that was going on, or if I'd have known that was going on, I wouldn't have planned to be out of town. This notice of motion sets the groundwork for finding solutions to these comments that you've heard by bringing back an outline report to council for a good discussion. I see this notice of motion as a first step towards tools like a community calendar. You might have heard me say that before. Events boards or similar types of communication tools. Again, this partner and support idea is something I believe that needs to be explored further within Beaumont and needs to really be something that we grasp onto. Tonight, I'm looking for council support to move this notice of motion forward. One of the things that I considered and wanted to have a quick discussion on tonight is just a timeline that might be acceptable to this notice of motion, Your Worship. So I would like to hear from administration what type of a timeline they would figure should this motion be supported, that this report could come back to council. I have an idea of a date, but I did want to get some feedback from administration. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Councillor. That was my one question on this as well. So we'll facilitate do we want to get that feedback from admin now, or do we want to open it up to, well, let's open it up to questions from members of council for Councillor Van Newkirk. Okay, seeing none, we'll head to administration. What are we looking at for timeline on this?
Well, Mike and I are just kind of shooting from the hip with each other right now, trying to sort this out because at this point in time, we don't even have anybody to develop a report, and we have a very busy fall season. So I would like to see this stretched out into Q1 of next year.
Q1, is that acceptable?
Yeah, the dart that I had thrown was a little more aggressive, and that was October 31. You know, and probably overly aggressive as I'm looking across the way here. So, you know, perhaps we could meet in the middle a bit and go December 31. Is that amicable, or is that still pushing a little too much?
I would throw my 2 cents in on that one. I mean, we had a municipal election that wraps up on October the 18th. We have budget, we have orientations, we have probably going to take November, December just to get organized. So my compromise in the middle would be January instead of trying to get it done before December.
January 31, 2022?
Yeah.
Okay, let's throw that dart. Thank you.
Sale, is that okay?
That sounds like it's a rhetorical question.
A little bit, but give you the opportunity.
Yeah, let's set that as a target. And if we run into a jam, we come back and say we're just not.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You know, that, you know, we set a target, and if there's some challenges, then you know, the council of the day can talk about that. So thank you. Fair enough.
I see speakers list, so we'll go with Councillor Danilak, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McGuswain.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Councillor Van Newkirk, I just have one quick question for you. I believe I understand where you're going with this, and I want to support it. I want to support you in this initiative and for our community and for council as well. My one question might be, in the example you used with the Badass group and the movie theater event, how do you envision potentially the gap that you think may exist between helping that community group promote their event? I'm not too sure how much responsibility the city should have in promoting an event held by a local community group. I know where you're going with this motion, but I'm using that specific example. I'm not sure how much responsibility we should have or capacity we have to offer to assist them to promote the event. You know what I'm getting at? If you can maybe expand on what you're seeing as I'm saying a gap, the gap may be the right word to use, but you know what I'm getting at? Can you give me some enlightenment of what you're thinking with that particular example, please? Thank you.
Well, be careful. You're asking me about operational things, and I love that. So, you know, one of the things I envision, you know, as a potential outcome from this report is some kind of a liaison position, you know, that communicates regularly with groups, and through that regular communication may find out that an event is occurring, and then that could open up a conversation around, hey, you know, we could put it on the sign, or we could include it in a communique, or, you know, we could help in these different ways, right? And this report would help to pinpoint some of the ways that administration could support, right? We have a bunch of efforts that are ongoing right now, and there's little things I'm supposing with the resources we have that might help situations like that along. That's what I would offer right now.
Follow up, Minister, if I may, please. Do you envision any potential budget implications for this type of report in terms of future staffing? Is that something you as seen could be part of the conversation?
No, I think that's why right now I'm just looking for a report. You know, this notice of motion is speaking to a report, you know, that will outline the approaches that might be undertaken, right? So I think as part of the second conversation, depending on what comes back, then, you know, maybe there's more robust conversation to have there. So
thank you very much.
Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McGuswain.
Councillor Van Newkirk, because I think it is a need in our community. I too saw a couple of events that are happening that unless you happen to see that post on that social media post or that notice in the paper, you would have missed it. Some fantastic events were happening. I'm just wondering if enough people are aware of what the city offers now. Because I know from being on a nonprofit board, and I think Mr. Perkowski can speak to that, there are things that nonprofit organizations in particular, and in the interim, until that report is ready, perhaps that's information we could get out.
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, that's a fantastic question, and it's a timely one. Because I think what's happened, and in conversations with some of the community groups following up with them, in the past 16 months, nobody's held any events, and they have forgotten, or there have been changes in personnel within the organizations, and they weren't aware that some of these channels were available For example, the digital billboard and the calendar that we do have on our website where we do promote those events. Some ones where we've proactively reached out to those organizations recently include the Farmers Market, as well as the Beaumont Society for the Arts with their picnic in the park and their Yocellas, and the Yocella Yoga and Cello on Sunday afternoons, as well as the Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival. In reaching out to those groups, it was a matter of them having personnel changes and not being aware that we had that available to them. So one of the things that we have done since then too is also talk to community event staff so that they can remind groups, organizations when they're applying for permits that is available to them if they are a community not-for-profit organization. Additionally, we've also connected those organizations with the Leduc Chamber of Commerce for the Discover Leduc region so that they're able to promote their events regionally as well, not just through the city of Beaumont, because that's a partnership that we recently joined as a city of Beaumont.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Councillor Swing, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, very brief for me. I'll support the motion. I guess my comment would be that there's also an onus on the group who's putting on the event to reach out to the city as well. We can only the city can do so much, and I'm glad that those programs are there. And so yeah, encourage everyone to reach out to the city to find out what those programs are. Yes, we'll see what we can do proactively, but it's a combined effort here. But I'll be supporting this motion.
Councillor Hendricks.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you. I think there's one idea that's been kicked around a little bit in the past, which is some kind of an app or something where you put all the events on and people can just download, or at one time we even talked about a registry. If you want to get registered with Beaumont, give us your email address. We'll send you an events calendar and keep you updated on current things. So there's a couple ways we can do it. I think we got a garbage app, so I think we should be able to do an events app. When your garbage is got to be out there, so we should be able to follow the events package at the same time. So perhaps that helps.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. Appreciate that. Seeing no more requests to speak, I'll round it out and call the question. I will be supporting this motion tonight. My take on this, though, is probably a more of a conversation for the second half. Once the report is there, we should be maybe having a conversation surrounding differentiating between for-profit events and events put on by our nonprofits, or is my only 2 cents. And I see, well, it comes up as Alan Harris, but I'm pretty sure that's Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wish to confirm that Councillor Van Newkirk would like to amend his motion to include that this report be delivered by the January 31st, 2022 date.
Councillor?
Yes, I can confirm that no later than January 31st, 2022 would be the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, seeing no further requests to speak, give you the opportunity to close council, then we'll call the vote.
No, thank you for the comments tonight, and I look forward to the vote.
Thank you. Call the question. Hang on. Got to catch up. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there members of council wishing to make notices of motion this evening? Okay, seeing none, I have 2. I would move that council direct administration to research transportation options for seniors and others to be able to access locations both within Beaumont city limits and outside of our borders. Some examples could be a debt service, expanded bus on demand, ride sharing options, taxi vouchers, or shared automobiles. And then facilitate a workshop and discussion after the 2021 municipal election, preferably in time for budget 2022, but that's probably dreaming in color. But in no case later than when the tax levy is brought for consideration in the spring of 2022, in case council wishes to implement some of those in order to allow adjustments if necessary. My second notice of motion, I wasn't going to make tonight due to administration assuring me they're going to have a look at business signage in the fall and consult with business owners. My last notice of motion that I was going to make this evening was move that council direct administration to prepare a report and facilitate a discussion with council outlining some potential conditions and circumstances in which encroachments into the city right-of-ways could be allowed, and to recommend the changes necessary to the land use bylaw to allow our development officers the latitude to allow these. to be completed after the 2021 municipal election and before Q2 of 2022. Seeing no further questions, we do have a closed session item tonight. As a quick reminder, we go into closed session under section 197.3 of the Municipal Government Act, and council is prohibited from passing a resolution or bylaw during a closed session meeting. If there is a direction or a decision reached, council will revert back to an open meeting to the public, and the direction will be recorded in the public minutes. FOIP does outline the items that would allow council to close a council meeting, which include matters where public disclosure could be harmful to third-party business interests, third-party personal privacy, individual or public safety, law enforcement, intergovernmental relations, economic or other interests. Do I have a member of council willing to move us into closed session tonight to consider the regional agricultural master plan? Sorry, I got to get back to the top. Councilor Barnhart.
I would make that motion, sir.
1 second, sorry. Thank you very much for Councilor Barnhart. Moving to closed section to consider the regional agricultural master plan pursuant to the Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act, section 21(1)(a)(2), harmful to intergovernmental relations, and section 24(1)(a), advice from officials. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? All right, so to members of the public that are still watching and to members of the public that maybe, nope, nobody's waiting. All right, so we do have one motion to make this evening. I will move that council accept the regional agricultural master plan as information. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none? All in favor, and we can hear you, CAO. Here we are. That carries unanimously, which brings us to item 14, adjournment. So I really do appreciate being back in person tonight, and hopefully it was a good meeting. And despite the black cloud that usually occurs when I say it should be a quick meeting, we're actually out not too bad. So I appreciate that, and looking forward to the last couple of meetings as we